Hello, friends. This is Chandrakant from Akulmak, and in today's edition of Spotlight, I'm very thrilled and honored to have Mr. Jeremy Blaine joining us from UK. And topic of our discussion today is the upheaval that we have seen past 15 days across the world, especially about the free digital media. So, to discuss this further, let me invite my friend from UK, Mr. Jeremy Blaine.
Thank you very much for having me again, CK. Pleasure to be here.
Right, Jeremy. So, the first government which bite the bullet was the Australian government. And they have been, we have been hearing a lot in the news that they were loggerhead with the likes of Google and Facebook about the advertising credits. So I think we will come to that in a bit. And that, by the way, is the major portion of our discussion today. But lots have happened in France. There are new regulations in France. EU is also going to come out with a new regulation. After the Capitol Hill, there are a lot of debates going on in US, how the swing for Biden happened because of Wall Street Post handle was blocked for a week by Twitter, and that created a swing in favor of Biden by 13%. So there is a lot of debate which is locally happening. There was an influence on the presidential election. But let me update you what has happened in India in last 5 days. India has come out with a new, not a law, it's a ruling basically. We already have a IT Act, which is a law. So there is a certain section of IT Act has been modified, and there are new rules inserted to manage the digital media. And while it is not a law, so the digital media still remains free in India. However, they have added few small things, few small steps from their point of view. But for implementation, these are very large. This has very large implications on the social media platform. Number one being, you have to have a compliance officer posted in India. Now, this person who is a compliance officer must know Indian laws. So he cannot be somebody who's just, as a filler. He has to be somebody of a repute. Number two, there could be instances where, a normal person may have a objection. Some morphed picture has been used, or a clipping of video has been used by somebody to create a narrative or a fake news, whatever you call it. So to prevent that, there has to be a grievance cell headed by a grievance officer locally present in India. And number three is, whenever government asks for the handle details, who started the mischievous post, those details must be shared with the government. And the social media platforms cannot hide behind the curtain of privacy laws or privacy use policy that they have. Now, the number four thing, which is sort of an umbrella, Indian government, unlike the Australian government, they have included the social media platforms and also the OTT platform, because from government point of view, a lot of unwanted things are happening on Netflix and Prime and those kind of platforms as well. So the law or the new rule has been changed to encompass the entire social and digital platforms and media. So I think this is something new. uh, I'm sure as a business, people like Facebook, Google, Twitter will have to make major changes in their legal framework and use policies. And also with Australia, where there is an arbitration. So I think you can talk more about it. So over to you, Jeremy.
Yeah, well, it's a very interesting point, isn't it, CK? And it does stem from the increase of power that many of these media outlets, social outlets, digital outlets have, and the unfiltered stream of news, be it fake, be it part truths, be it full truths. So be it in the public interest or outside of the public interest. And I think that actually is really at the heart of it, is public interest journalism and what is in the public interest, and the power that comes from some of these mainstream medias that are able to do, as you said, with the election in the US, and how Trump before Biden had used that, and is continuing to use it even though he's banned, just shows you the frightening power and the sense of influence that it can have on others. And that's really at the core of probably, before everybody else, it is going through Parliament in Australia. And they're saying, look, it goes into, first of all, the public interest and public interest journalism. So a way to start to manage the news that is filtered through, but also critically, it's about the use of data. And we know that Google and Facebook and other big platforms like that, are building a business on data and selling data or selling information and insight through that data to drive advertising revenues, to drive very specific and personalized content to people. I'll be looking on the screen here. I'll be shopping for, I don't know, I'll be shopping for some running shoes, let's say, for example, and all of a sudden, like an hour later, I'm seeing adverts for no apparent reason. I'm thinking in my head, for running shoes for other sites, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. That's coincidence. I was just looking, so let me click on that. The power and the influence that is there is key. Now that data is being sold, or if you like, that power of data is being sold by these social platforms to all of their customers as a way of getting direct marketing, personalized marketing, and for paying for brands or for individuals to raise their profile. So the point being is that as they are getting all of this data from different sites, like news sites, particularly Australia's around sort of the news sites, they're using journalism that has been, kind of fair journalism that has been done, bringing it into their own sites and news sites and just displaying that, but they're not paying for it. And yet, on the flip side, they understand the power of data and the fact that it's worth something. And so while there, interestingly enough, was, quite a lot of noise, of course, by particularly Google and Facebook in Australia about this, in the background, there's a lot now going on around making individual deals with news channels, newspaper organizations in Australia, to pay them a certain amount to recognize the data, i.e. the journalism that's coming, and then provide and grant usage for that. But that comes, I think, very similar. It doesn't go as far as what you're describing in India, as far as making sure that, there is compliance, there is fair grievance, and there is protection of people that they're gathering the news from. But what they're talking about in Australia is the measurement behind this is making sure that the pay, that what the journalists and the media organizations are being paid is being used to create public interest stories and news rather than sensation that can be sold. So misuse of what they're now being paid, for the benefit of, let's say, the shareholders, or to actually fuel more populist news and going more into the public interest. So that's one step. But I think from what India are doing, and certainly what the EU is thinking about, is making it a little bit more robust. A part of, for example, in the EU, making it, bolting bits of the GDPR, the data protection elements into that, making sure that there is a due process for every citizen of the European Union, and then individual countries there also thinking about what is their country legislation, because we then need to negotiate separately with these big organizations, social, to get our own deals, because of course we've got our own free press in these organizations, let's say, in media outlets. So there's lots of things happening in the background here. But it's necessary because it's all around, paying for due data, which they're doing, and making sure that it's regulated now, because we see the power of misuse as well.
So, Jeremy, while I fully agree with you what you are saying and what the various governments are doing, don't you think that this is going away from the free press, free media, free digital media norms? Because essentially all these platforms runs on the data produced by guys like you and me. I mean,
Mm.
there are 1.5 billion people producing different types of informatic or even nonsensical, sometimes, TikTok kind of videos. But that is driving the whole the digital strategy of the world today. So if you start
Yeah.
controlling that, are we not moving away from the right to speech clauses in the constitution of various countries?
It depends on the country, though, you see, because I think, and it's also a fine line between traditional media, like the fourth estate, the traditional media and journalism on the right hand side, and all of us as individuals who are driving data and actually are delighted when when sites pick it up and say, oh, we're going to run with your story, because it gives us a sense of, it gives us an image, it gives us a brand, it gives us coverage, if we're in business, or it gives us notoriety or popularity or celebrity, until it goes wrong. So actually, even that sort of freedom comes with something that we like and don't like. We like to pick and choose, don't we, as individuals? It's like, it's all very well if I'm getting, look at all this great coverage that I'm getting, look at the TikTok video of me, kind of skateboarding with a drink and, playing Fleetwood Mac in the background and getting loads of views and suddenly getting a lot from it. However, when that's flipped and that's used for negative press, then there is a huge outcry based on that again. Or there's a lot of then the word that I've got to use is hatred. There's a lot of naysayers that are doing that, that go onto it and troll and follow these people. So you can't just cherry pick, even as individuals, the bits that we like and then complain about the bits that we don't like. Either we accept that we need to have some better policing and some better regulation about it, which I totally agree we do. But it also needs to come with some level of protection, because we've seen the power of fake news, and we continue to see the power of fake news and what it drives, and the acceptability of fake news. And where is this taking us, as not just as individuals, but as a human race? It's like, there's so much kind of information that is unfiltered now, ideas. I just think we need a filter. And I think if this takes us partway through a filter, because the platforms that provide us this are having to now pay for selected content, to provide then, more of a public service and responsible public service, then I think that can only be a good thing. The problem will come, CK, and I agree with this, is that some countries will use that, perhaps some more authoritarian governments, or some where they feel that they need more control, over this area, where they might feel they can make some money out of it, may use it for nefarious purposes. And I think that's the risk. So it's full of potholes, full of challenges, as well as the opportunities and the benefits that it can bring. So it's going to be very interesting to see, because of course in Australia this is going to take months to get through, a full year then to measure and to kind of figure out what's really happened. And in the meantime, lots of other countries are going to be making their own rules and regulations. However, I do think it's a very interesting and right perspective to have, is that ultimately that big platforms who are taking data from different people to use to drive popularity to their sites and to drive viewership to their sites, like TikTok, for example, pay for that data that's doing it. Why shouldn't they?
Well, that's the whole point, because people like you and me will make quality content, but we are not differentiated by the platforms in either way. It's a number game, and the threshold for making money has been kept so high, it is not achievable unless you make a very sensational content. And that is where the trap is, because most of the people either make some nonsensical sensationalize the video, or make a fake news, which is again creating sensations. So for those people, the thresholds are crossed and they started getting these peanuts. I think the Australian government, as a layman, I will just explain what I feel as a layman, that if you compare the digital media and with the traditional media, most of the traditional media was run by the ad agencies, because the media is actually making money by advertising. And if you look at the ad agencies, they will collect all the advertisers and publish on different media houses like print, TV, or whatever. And the pandemic actually changed the whole thing. The media, and including news, migrated to the digital platforms, and therefore the advertisers also shifted to the platforms, leaving behind the traditional digital media high and dry. And I think that is what the trigger of the decision made by Australian government, because now suddenly some of these influential people who are well known, and like guys like Rupert Murdoch, which is very big in Australia. My question again, I have given this all background because don't you think that the government may be under influence of these media moguls and trying to create a control on digital platforms?
Well, I think there's a balance, though. I think that's right. But I mean, ultimately, it's about, the question is journalism properly funded? Because what we've seen, exactly as you say it, what we've seen is that as the digital agencies and large digital companies have come in, they've taken the big chunk of the advertising revenue away from the traditional media, and yet they're using the data from the traditional media to do so. So yes, there will always be the big conglomerates and news organizations which will have their own self-interest at heart. And we've seen that, we see how that plays out, and the power of and the decisions that they make around that. Look at Fox News as part of that, that kind of empire in the US, for example, and how that continues to drive a very different narrative, through there. And there's a rise also of, the problem is there's a rise of news organizations apart from traditional media that are now growing up. Here in the UK, there's two new news channels that have been raised. But, the fear is that they become more right wing and more nationalist and more protectionist in their focus. So the fact is that you've got traditional media, you've got the digital giants, and then you've got this new pocket that is feeding on the fuel and the need and for sensational and sensationalism. And I think it's got into a real mess. And so if it, for me, this is why I think that while there's lots of different nuance in this, it can only be a good thing that responsible government and responsible legislation is looking at this to think, how can this be made a fairer process? So we protect, the, right and just journalism and public interest journalism, at the same time as recognizing that there are things out of our control around the sensationalism, the fake news, and whatever. But if we can actually shore up traditional journalism and those that are still standing up for the free press, and responsible journalism that is in the public interest and for the public interest, then we will always retain the balance. Otherwise, the danger and the risk here is that traditional journalism and traditional media companies are just going to lose out, and then the power is in the hands of even fewer, who have self-interest at heart and who are using data in a really powerful, questionable way that we've seen, more recently, and that will continue to manipulate, not just in a positive way, but also potentially in a negative way, what news is filtered to certain people and how people view news. So I think we need that balance, and in order to get that balance, we need some level of protection for the traditional media and press.
There is one more issue, Jeremy. Any production costs money, any good production, because you need, script writers, you need a crew, and you need editors and stuff like that. And all of that cost money. So if you look at the traditional media, that money is paid for because there is an input and there is an output. And the advertisers basically pay per second, and this usually the advertising credits are pretty high. Unlike the digital media, where the platforms get the content for free. Absolutely. I mean, they have created a platform. They spend a lot of decades in building it up. That is given for sure. But in order to make money on the platform, there is no incentive for a quality production house, because the cost is theirs. And after incurring all this cost, when they bring their digital content to the platform, there is no money back. And when the advertisers are paying these platforms, the return or ROI to the production houses is like 2% or even lesser. So what people get out of digital platforms as advertising credit is kind of very low today. So I think there has to be some regulation around that also, because they have kept the thresholds of monetization so high, which are not achievable if you just follow the traditional method. And hence it promotes sort of fake news. What is your opinion on this?
Well, yes, I do. I mean, I think that's the case. I think this whole, this kind of unfiltered deluge that we can get, that is, because it essentially, anybody now in the world, the billions of people in the world can be a journalist, or can send something that suddenly becomes viral that they will pick up and use on these platforms. And they want to do that so that they can curate a lot of that free news that's around there. But what's quite interesting is that, there is a recognition, even though, from these big giants, that there is a need to filter this down, particularly the more reputable ones, like Google and Facebook, that want to be seen to be doing the right things, while in the background making sure that their algorithms are absolutely evolving at the rate that they have been evolving at, so that they can go to the people that are advertising with them and say, here is the data that we can give you that will give you exactly what you need for your target audience. But the fact that Google in Australia, for example, kind of stepped back from the edge and launched its news showcase product just last month, actually, and has started to discuss this, and actually done a deal with Seven West Media already in Australia, which is it's not been confirmed, but it's been reported to be around a 30 million a year deal. And what the traditional media is saying, this is fair payment for responsible journalism. So I think what even these big giants are seeing is that they need to have some level of credibility behind this, as well as the fun stuff that can be there too. But also there is a price tag for it, and they also need to do some cleaning up of their own backyard, and probably rebrand and relaunch this. And then on the back of that, they're almost kind of sort of it's sort of reinventing it. So yes, it's kind of got to a stage where it is now. But I'm glad to say that they're actually taking a step back and saying, this is an opportunity for us to relaunch how we do this, how we use individualized content, how we use traditional journalism and so on, and how we recognize, the data that is coming into us, but how we can also use that to then sell to our customers in a way that some of them will be more comfortable with, potentially.
But will that solve the problem of production getting enough revenue out of it? For example, if I have to cover a story, let's say right now my channel is based on interviews, but if I have to take an interview of a big shot who's sitting in Chennai, and I have to send a person there, but there is no incentive for me to send a person or travel myself, because there is no revenue being generated. Will it solve the problem of the content producers? Because what will happen is that the digital platforms will strike a deal with large houses, and that may happen in India also. The largest one here is Bennett and Coleman. So the chances are the Bennett and Coleman will have the inside deal going on with the large houses like Google and Facebook. So they will have their deal. What will happen to the actual content providers on these digital platforms? How they will get compensated?
Yeah, but it's a good question, and this is not a solution. This is the almost like kind of the beginning of the journey down here, because this will set a precedent that talks about insightful and responsible content is worth something. So therefore, if you think about the gig economy, for example, small medium enterprise that you and I both both very passionate about, experts, I know you and I and a lot of my colleagues, we write a lot, we do a lot of research, and we put it out there. And at the moment, we're kind of putting it out there. Either we're trying to sell it on our own platforms, or we're putting it out there for free to gain, gain mentions, or to gain an audience behind it. But there will come a time, and I think what it takes, though, is a collective rather than individual approach. So, as the gig economy becomes a much bigger part of even our, traditional organizations, is that what are the bodies that are standing up and saying that? What are the federations of businesses? What are the federations of freelancers who are standing up and who are saying we are standing up for our members who have an income from the gig economy, who drive value from here, and who should be recognized in some way for what they produce and how they do it. And that might not be exactly it might not be, for example, financial remuneration. It could be coverage. It could be putting them on a platform. It doesn't need to be monetary, but it needs to be recognized in terms of value. So I think this is the beginning of the journey, and that has to start more or less, at some of these big corporations. It's starting at government level, and then it will filter down, because a lot of these bodies will then move up the line, ask questions like you're asking to government, saying, but what about us small businesses? What about us entrepreneurs? What about us gurus and experts who are doing all this research and, it's being kind of used out there? What about us?
Absolutely. I think this is a big question, because all the digital platforms like Facebook, which are the large ones, and Google, which is YouTube, is getting all the content from people like you and me, and maybe many senior people who are producing this content, not getting compensated for their knowledge and their efforts. So I think that is a big question. We don't have an answer for it right now. The good thing is that the Indian government has given 3 months time. They have laid out the rulings, and it's all public information, and they said that, hey, you get your act together. I'm sure they have started negotiating with the Indian government right now. So we will see. We will come back on the same subject maybe after 3 months again. Uh, but I think you have put the things in right perspective, because you have a global, outlook. You work with Australian companies, and you know what is going on there. You also know what is going on in UK and countries like India. So thank you very much for joining us today, and for your wisdom and for your suggestions.
Thank you, CK. See you next time.
See you next time, Jeremy, and take care. And wish you all the best for your ventures and your research which you are doing.
Thank you.
Bye bye.